So, Lutz, for the uninitiated, please introduce yourself and how do you best describe Two Thirds to your friends?
Well, basically, I think we're here talking about menswear. We actually have a menswear and a women's wear line, but if I would talk about menswear only, I would probably say it's a brand for the gentleman surfer. So it was born out of the idea that I was growing older, and all the surf brands that I was wearing, they were getting younger, younger, and younger. And I kind of felt I was, equally passionate about surfing and the entire ocean culture, but somehow the brands were not reflecting that in the style that I was living it anymore. And yeah, that's how Two Thirds was born, actually.
Interesting. So the brand, now correct me if I'm wrong, was conceived in 2010, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
correct. In 2010.
so now, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking, Lutz?
I'm 42. I'm 42.
Okay.
So
All right.
I was 30. I was 30 years old. I actually studied macroeconomics and politics. Actually, most of it in the UK, and then ended up doing a PhD. And I worked at the United Nations. And it all sounded really idealistic and interesting, and lots of traveling and good salaries, etc. But halfway in, I just got super bored. I had this thing of like, I have to write a PhD thesis of about 300 pages, and I can't even read a 300-page book about the topic. So how am I ever in life going to write a 300 pages? And then also I was, I mean, I think the United Nations is a good organization, but I was a bit disappointed in terms of, getting my hands dirty and doing stuff, but it was very, very theoretical, etc. And yeah, that's how I ended up to think about doing my own thing, and that's how somehow Two Thirds then ended up coming to life. Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to get the moment that you twigged that there was something that you needed to do in the fashion world versus what you were doing, and you trained, and it must have been, was it quite a gamble at the time to make the leap?
I think it was quite a gamble because I was in a very good position at various levels where I was. So starting up, whatever you do, is obviously a big risk, or it feels like a big risk at the moment. But apart from that, I really had no fashion experience whatsoever. The only thing that I knew was that I like clothing. I like buying clothing. I would never consider myself a fashionista per se, but I always liked clothing, and I always had appreciation for clothing. And apparently my brother, when I founded the brand, told me that at the age of 14, 15, I would tell him that it would be so cool if there was a surf brand which would be different, etc. So actually I didn't remember that anymore at the time that I founded Two Thirds, but he told me. And so it was not like the typical fashion startup where you would say, I worked at a fashion company before, I got all the experience, I'm a designer or whatever, and then I start my own. It was really very different. And I think mine actually came from the sustainability angle, from the marketing angle, and from the appreciation for fashion. So it was a bit different in the way of it, how it was created. Also, I'm not the designer. I just have sort of the vision of what I wanted to look like, but I then hired designers, etc. So yeah.
Interesting. So do you give designers a guide or a brief or a mood board from what's in your head, and if so, how do you kind of project what you want into something that they can execute?
I mean, it was very different then than it is now. Back then it was kind of my vision in my head, and then the designer or the designers would come and would say, "Are you sure?" and then
How is this possible?
I was, yeah, you really want this? And then now, obviously, we have a design team. Our head of design has been with us for 7 years, so it's a very, very sort of how do you say that in English? Like it's like an oiled engine, you know what I mean? It's very in tune. We all know the brand really well. We all know what we want. So It was mood boards before. Now it's basically for me rather saying, hey, I would like to do this or that, and the main sort of collection is created by them, presented to me, and then I usually give my go ahead. So they're already like very much in tune with the brand, because we most of our employees have been with us for quite some time.
Right. And so what are you putting on those mood boards in the very early days? You say you're not a fashionista yourself, so you perhaps don't go out shopping and have I'm guessing you don't have like a wardrobe of yourself that you go, right, people need to look like how I look, but you do have something in your mind of what the brand should look like.
Yeah, I mean, basically, for me, it was always this feeling of clothing, and that's why I think the gentleman surfer is a nice description, because it kind of felt like I would like to have clothing that has this beach relaxed vibe to it, but you could still wear it on a casual Friday in any office, you know, and that was the key idea. And then obviously we're a sustainable brand, so I think sustainability comes together with quality, because nothing that doesn't last long is sustainable. So that immediately takes you to classics, because, you know, if you have a product that you could maybe wear 15, 20 years, then obviously you have to create something that is not too fashiony and only lasts a season. You have to create something more timeless. So I think it's this combination of being inspired to a certain extent by surfing brands and their beach relaxed vibe, and on the other hand, being inspired rather by workwear brands from the UK, you know, good sort of quality brands from Japan, sort of more sort of classic men's workwear, which for me has a bit this relaxed feel to it, you know, because you know, typical workwear jacket that you could also wear as a just sort of as an overshirt on a casual Friday, etc. That type of product. And then when we work a lot with linen, which for me is a very sort of gentleman but also beachy type of material. So yeah, but that's kind of the vision that I had in my head. I just kind of wanted to transport the traditional surf brands into more gentleman style setting, and more classy, less logo, less colors, etc.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, anyone that is a listener to the show, or regular listener, I should say, knows that I kind of get my steer with clothes by watching films and picking up nods. And, you know, like you mentioned, the beach classic. I think I was just showing a picture here. You can perhaps see it on the YouTube of the Aaron sweater. It kind of has the echoes of Steve McQueen and Thomas Crown Affair and things like that. Were you looking at any particular films or actors at all when you were
Well,
putting
the funny thing is that sweater is actually from a mood board I sent with a picture of Steve McQueen. So that's quite right there.
There we go.
I mean, I don't have any particular movie, etc. But I think everything that was a bit 50s, 60s, 70s beach culture from California, but also, I mean, we're a European brand, but we're a surf-inspired brand. So surf inspiration takes you to Australia and to California and those places where people dress up quite differently. And then being of European heritage, it takes you more to, you know, Biarritz, Saint-Tropez, those type of places. Plus, our creative director is from Denmark. So it's kind of like what really is like swirling all in is those surf influences, the European classic heritage beach culture mixed in with this sort of it sounds like a crazy mix, but mixed in with sort of a very subtle Scandinavian less is more type of attitude. I think that's sort of our pool of inspiration. Which sounds a bit crazy, but
no, it makes sense. Yeah, definitely. If anyone goes on the website, I think they'll get that feel for it as well. It's it's less Point Break, like you say, more gentleman on a surfboard, which is I hope the reach you're going for. And you mentioned sustainability as well. What was so I'm curious, like sustainability is a word that everyone knows now, and it's obviously something that people really strive for, and brands really do pledges before they put or launches together. But what was the landscape like for you at 2010? What was the word like, and what was the mood music around sustainability when you launched this brand?
I mean, it was interesting because back in the days, I mean, today we're entirely D2C brand, entirely e-commerce driven. And back in the day, we had distributors, we had wholesale, we even had 2 own stores. So it was a different infrastructure that we had in terms of points of sale. So I'm mentioning this because back in 2010, all the buyers were like, okay, it's sustainable. Yeah, okay, whatever. Nobody really cared about it. And then some did. And then at the same time, in terms of production, it was quite a nightmare because you would go somewhere and they would be like, organic cotton. Yeah. I think I have a roll in white and black back there somewhere, but if you really want this, so yeah, it was, and organic cotton in our days is absolute basic, and it's probably the lowest level of us doing sustainable materials, and we have many more that are way more sustainable than that. But anyways, it's interesting how that shifted, and at the beginning it was a bit of a nightmare, really, in terms of prices, production, and just getting a collection together. Yeah.
But it was something very important for you, though.
I mean, it was important for me because, I mean, I think that's also why I mentioned the United Nations. I think it's a bit like what drives me, and I think studying what I studied and working where I worked before I started Two Thirds is kind of, I could never just do something for the sake of making money or just pure creativity. But I'm sorry, my daughter is just running in here.
It's okay. We got an after something very important.
apparently. So yeah, no. So the feeling was, okay, if I do something, I feel, I mean, I don't see myself as saving the world or anything like that. I think I'm a realist, being an idealist, but being a realist at the same time. So yeah, I just felt I needed to do something that would make sense to me, and at least do it the right way. I think that's what's been driving me.
Well, it sounds like you can sleep well at night, knowing that you're doing your bit at least, and anyone that wears your clothing is also, it's a step towards the light at least. So how, in terms of numbers over the course of, like, I guess 12 years, and I think 13 years now, you've had this brand, and I guess the trajectory's been pretty good. I mean, we've had like COVID and things like that. Were there any blips or obstacles along the way where you thought maybe it's time to go back to something else?
Well, yeah, there were probably the first 5 years were really tough. We launched as the classic way, went to the bread and butter show in Berlin and all the capsule shows in New York, and et cetera. And at the beginning, we were quite successful. But then it was also at the same time that online was more and more present. So we had customers like Zalando, and we got into this typical, how do you say, vicious circle of trying to please everybody. Our Japanese distributor, Zalando, also doing everything, doing own online store, own store. And basically by 2015, I was pretty exhausted as an entrepreneur, because I was traveling all the time. I have 4 kids. The first 2, I basically barely saw them at the beginning, and my wife wasn't too happy either. So anyway, so it was a complicated situation for me, and as well, I had the feeling that there were too many influences on the brand. We did like some crazy shirts for a Japanese distributor. Then we did other things for someone like Bloomingdale's, etc. and in between collabs for Vans, and I don't know, it was a very chaotic thing. And in 2015, I just basically came to the point where I said, okay, I have to change something here. Otherwise I'm going to have a heart attack at the age of 40. and that's where we basically sized down a little bit in 2015, went totally online, hired people that were experts in online sales, moved the entire production to Europe. Even jackets, knitwear, everything was moved to Europe, to have a sort of a smaller, more flexible infrastructure. We introduced pre-order, which basically was that we would put 3 products online, would see for 7 or 10 days how much what sold, and then we would kind of start production based on a projection
really? Okay.
of sales. So yeah,
right.
and
So
that
I'm
worked
interested
really. Yeah, sorry.
No, I trampled over you. Sorry, but I'm interested in this because on the website it says that you pioneered the pre-order concept, really, and I'm curious as to, so you put the designs on the website, but do you kind of have a stockpile of these designs ready to go ahead of anything else, or do you just do like prototypes of these designs, see what there is a demand for, and then go, right, we're going to hammer these out?
Yeah, it's basically we do prototypes, do the shootings, and then we see what the demand is. The system has changed a little bit over the course of time. At the beginning, when we were testing a lot of things, we did a lot of prototypes and then canceled a lot of them, told the customer, the 2 customers that bought the one that didn't make it, hey, here's your money back, we're sorry, we're not going to produce this one. And then with the course of time, our collections got bigger. There's products like winter jackets where you can't apply the system because the lead times are too long, and the customer is not going to wanting to wait for 3 months. So we did a lot more in summer, and then obviously what that did is we online from 2015 to now, we've been actually growing a lot and been quite successful, and that simply created more data in terms of we knew what our customers like, what our customers want. So basically at the beginning, maybe 50% of our collection was a pre-order test, and then maybe 20 or 30% would be canceled. Whereas now we're at 10 to 15% because we already know how to design, what to design, and what's going to be bought and what's not going to be bought. So it's less now. But yeah, it's been a very good system because in terms of sustainability, first of all, it helped us to grow as a company. And at the same time, I think it's probably the most sustainable thing about any brand, because we sell 100% of our stock. We never have stock left, ever.
Wow. And so how do you aggregate the data though? Is it like email surveys, or do how do you get the opinions of people as to what designs you should be pushing forward?
It's basically just sales. So we put them online. We say, let's say we would put a t-shirt online. I don't know, middle of February would tell you ETD is middle of April or beginning of March. Then we would see how much it sells, and basically we would hit the production button at 10 days after we launched the product. So maybe we would have sold 100 white ones, 150 blue ones, and 10 red ones. So we'd probably cancel the red one and then say, okay, we're going to produce 1,500 white ones and 1,000 blue ones, or something like this. So we kind of make a projection of sales. And it's been interesting that the people were really willing to go with it and understood it. And it's actually interesting now because we had a couple of people obviously complaining about us online, etc. And now after 5 or 6 years, the way someone complains about pre-order, which happens rarely because we have a big customer service team and they explain you everything, and you get thousands of emails telling you about the process, etc. But it's sometimes that someone complains and then you have 7 or 8 customers under the Instagram post saying, no, you didn't understand. It's pre-order. It's super cool.
Oh, great. So they come to your defense. They defend your honor. I love that.
Yeah. It's really nice to see.
That's the best way. It's having your community do that. So, I mean, it's interesting though, that concept of the pre-order, because I was just talking to another guest on the show, from a company called Blake Mill, and they would have like a shirt design, and then they would put it out and field test it with like email data and stuff like that. Which ones would you go for? And out of all of their customers, they would go, right, well, like that one, and then they'll put that into production. And then when it goes into production, sometimes they said they wouldn't even sell one, you know. So it's kind of like people might say something yes on an email, but it's really money that talks, isn't it? So if you're literally buying something and then going, right, I'll invest, I'll put that into that design, you go ahead and make it. That's the real proof of the pudding.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, we did testing like this before. We tried to do it with winter jackets, where at the end we ended up having a pre-order, but we already, I mean, it would go live in pre-order and would be delivered, let's say in October, but it would be pre-orderable in September. But we already pressed the production button in June, so it was, you know, we couldn't change anything anymore. We already had to make the decision. So we tried to optimize that, and we asked on Instagram, we did like contests, and we asked, do you want the white jacket or the blue? And I can only agree with the company you're just mentioning, because it was totally off. Like, because people would say, you know, super funky color, and the people would say, yeah, that one, but then nobody bought it.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like what they do in physical stores. No, you go in and they put like a really pop color at the beginning to hang the same style in navy just behind it, and you end up buying the navy one. And I think it's the same dynamic.
Yeah, I'm actually guilty of this as well. When people say, will you sponsor me if I do a plane jump, you know, like a skydive? I'm like, yeah, sure. I've been like thinking they'll never do it, and when they come back to me with all the photos, I'm like, oh, I'll have to delete this guy from my friend list. I'll have to block him from everything and move home. Damn it. I digress. Let's do we have plans for 2023? I mean, in terms of what's next? I know you say you're online only, but perhaps any pop-ups or anything like that can come to London, maybe?
No, we would love to, obviously, but we just decided that we're going to stay purely digital. There was a lot of talk about us doing pop-up events, even thought about Airbnb apartments, showing the collection in various cities. We've been talking in the company for ages to open a flagship store in Barcelona. But we're always coming back to kind of 2/3 for me as an entrepreneur. There was this time 2010 to 2015 where I suffered, and I felt that, you know, the product wasn't perfect. Just, I wasn't really 100% happy. And then there's, for me, is this time 2015 to 2022 that went really well. I'm super happy with the product, with our suppliers. Everything feels just right. And that's the moment where we focused. But we focused on in terms of production facility. We focused on product groups. We said, okay, we could also do this product, but let's stay focused. And I really kind of learned that I think we can offer the coolest and best product if we are focused. So that's why we just decided to stay fully digital, and actually put everything in creating the best digital experience you can have. So we basically said, okay, let's try to be the physical store online, which is a high benchmark. You know, you go into a store, there's a nice person in the best case, and you can look at the product, you can try the product, you can put it on, and you can give them your credit card and walk out of the store. I mean, that's a pretty high benchmark. So for us, it's really the plan to get to that point where the online experience feels almost as an in-store experience. I know it sounds very not romantic, but I feel that's where we're good at. And what is sort of coming in 2023 for us, we're going to move a bit more into like quality basics made in Europe, as we do everything, but we're going to expand the whole basic range, which has really worked well for us. And we are expanding into the United States, which we already started, which is actually working quite well. So yeah, I guess our focus is going to be more quality basics, territory expansion into the United States. And then what I'm really happy about is, and maybe that's interesting because I think we're talking about menswear here, right? the menswear collection is really close to my heart because we founded the brand like this, and it started, and now as we have the problem like every other brand, women are like 85% of our sales. It's gotten really, really big, and then a year ago, we hired a really, really good menswear designer, and kind of like both of us, as a sort of passionate internal project, are really taking care of the menswear collection. Like, I have to be honest with you, some styles in the women, I don't know what they're called or haven't even seen them sometimes, because there's a lot of product we're launching. Whereas in menswear, really, like every piece crosses my table. I wear them, I try them, and that's also something that we really want to expand a little bit further in 2023 to, because we're a company that is very consumer driven, and also sounds not very romantic, but very data driven. So we see what customers like, and we produce accordingly. But we said we need sort of this playground for us of that vision, where we just don't say, okay, this is working, they like this color, they like this, but we want to create sort of this internal innovation lab of our design department together with me, where we just do whatever we like, and we just feel the world needs to see this. So this is also something for 2023 that we're really looking forward to.
Exciting times. Well, listen, Lutz, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for walking me through the brand. TwoThirds.com is a place people can go and check out the garments. TwoThirds_BCN, as in Barcelona, I guess. That's kind of...
Yes, correct.
That's where you can hang out on Instagram and see more of the collections there at a glance. And we'll put all the links over on the show notes over at menswearstyle.co.uk. But in the meantime, Lutz, thanks for jumping on, and hope to see you at some point in London in the new year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Hasta luego. Feliz Navidad. Great. Lutz, thanks so much.